Oh, hello. Do you think that Big Brother is watching? Or that the Illuminati is planning to take over the world? Have you happened to have an encounter with a space alien today? Well, if the answer to those questions is yes, then grab your hat. This is tinfoil hat time. Welcome back to Tinfoil Hat Time. For those who haven't been following completely, I've been moving my offices around a little bit. I'm not completely set back up. When I am, I'll read and code the beginnings, and some of the things I'm noticing I don't like about this is I'm kind of in between a front parking lot and a main road, which is quite a bit different from the kind of like more woods area I had in my back office. So I have my window open. I'm just kind of seeing this parade of people coming by. Also, the light being open. I have kind of bad lighting right now, but I just wanted to get another video out, so I'll be adjusting the lighting and working with it. And usually I actually encode these at night, not during the day, so that I can have more control over the lighting. So I'm a little bit washed out. Hopefully everything else looks good. I don't have my permanent residing spots for Roger the alien back here yet, so he's just kind of going to chill over my shoulder like that. So I'm still deciding exactly what I'm going to do on everything, but I just love the bookshelf back there, and we'll get everything put back together. But in the meantime, we want to talk today about kind of continuing on the Windows dilemma a little bit. Windows backporting the telemetry, or the spyware, as I write here. So this for me is a big issue, because for me, Windows 8 was it wasn't particularly good. It wasn't particularly bad. I thought it was different enough that I didn't overall like it, but the stylistic change is not enough to get me to not use a system. And the iOS debate was a very similar thing. iOS 6, I loved it. I thought it was just such an awesome looking platform. But then we moved to iOS 7 and everything got gray and black and ugly, and it was just horrible appearance compared to iOS 6, which was just gorgeous. And but I still maintained using the Apple products for the phones and for the tablets and stuff, because it still functionally worked well. And so the same thing going with Windows 8, they got rid of the start menu, which was the most horrible thing they could do. A lot of people hated it, but underneath everything, on top of this, the settings being a little bit misconfigurable, but how often do you really get in there and change the settings? You tweak them a few times. Now, in the middle of all this, I actually end up buying a Surface Pro 1, which is right here. And the Surface Pro 1 really showed me kind of the power of the Windows 8 platform, where, it was very nice that you could go back and forth. And I thought that on a tablet type system, the Windows 8 seemed to work. And so if that was kind of your purpose, was to develop something, and that's what people were talking about when the Surface Pro 1 came out, to develop a tablet that could replace your computer was kind of the goal. Now, I still think that's a horrible goal, because I use tablets for completely different purposes than I use computers, okay? They're just different devices. I don't use my phone like my computer, and that's why I don't buy into the whole data collection, we're doing this on your phone, what on your computer too, because I use them for different things and different purposes. So that being said, I didn't hate Windows 8. I thought it was not an improvement over Windows 7, but it wasn't enough to get me to not use it. But Windows 10 came out, and again, it wasn't the stylistic differences. And I wasn't impressed with their new start menu. We brought back the start menu. No, you neutered the start menu. You gave me a piece of crap that I cannot customize. I can't set it up how I like it. Now you've given me this new abomination in the anniversary update, which was infinitely worse. I don't know how you could possibly take a start menu that was perfectly good in 7, totally annihilated in 8, bring it back and announce to the world, we brought back the start menu. And it was a total piece of crap, because now I have this perpetually long list of bloatware crap that I can't hide, I can't uninstall, I can't get rid of, and I hate it all. I don't want to see it. Okay? Why do I have to go into a business environment with my Windows computer and have an Xbox game app on my window? No, I don't want to see that. Groove music. I hate groove music. I'd like to do away with it. Thank you very much. But no, I can't uninstall it, at least not without running some pretty hardcore batch scripts, which I've kind of done. But all that being said, Windows 10 is not my discussion point today. There are a lot of people that said, well, I don't want Windows 10. I'm going to stay with Windows 7 and Windows 8. The problem is if you stay on Windows 7 and Windows 8 and you've updated your system, you have all of that telemetry stuff. And that was my big deal. That was the reason I was not going to use Windows 10, is because all of this data collection and all of this telemetry that you cannot seem to turn off. So to go into this discussion, I want to talk about the Surface, and that's why I have it here today, which actually I'm conveniently also using my little notes. I usually write part of the blog post here, and then I use the blog post kind of as a rough outline for what I do. I otherwise do my videos unscripted. But with my Surface, I got it when it had Windows 8.0, which I kept for a long time. But when Windows 10 came out, I really wanted to get a chance to play with Windows 10, but I definitely did not want to mess up my main computers. So the Surface is actually my writing computer. My books get written on my Surface, and I really like the Surface for that platform because it had enough processing power that it was really good, but it was a real computer, but it has a good enough battery life that I thought that the Surface overall, for what it was, is just a fabulous, fabulous device. I'm not sure I'd agree nowadays, but back when I got this, I don't know, 3 years ago or so, this was a fabulous device. So what I decided to do is I decided that this was going to be the computer I put Windows 10 on because it's not one that's critical for my office functions. And so I went through and did all the updates, and I actually intentionally did the updates until I got the ugly Windows 10, Get Windows 10 Now nag button, clicked on my nag button, downloaded my Windows 10, upgraded this thing to Windows 10, played with it for about a month and said, wow, that's horrible, and I reverted it back to 8. The problem is, when reverting it back to 8, the problem you got is a whole lot of ports listening. Now, I've done a whole lot to this. I've run a lot of batch scripts to try and get rid of all these connected ports. But there are still a lot of different ports going on here. I'm trying to get it to work there. Now, we can ignore the Firefox connections to the internet down here at the bottom. There's 3 of them because I'm actually running my WordPress back there on the side. But if you looked at all these, and they're not quite as much on here now because it's kind of done everything that it wants to do right now, but there were about a good 30 or 40 connections that were being made between system processes on the Surface, sending and receiving data back and forth to all sorts of crazy IP addresses. Now, I tried to grab some of those IP addresses, but unfortunately, I'm needing a new router. On top of pushing my low-end router to the limit by currently having like 8 devices connected to it on network cables, and then another, 10 or so devices on wireless, my router's getting some serious work right now. So, all that being said, all that to just kind of to say that I tried to pull my router logs and it's not saving router logs properly. So I upgraded my Windows 10 system, make sure it had all the latest things, ran TCP view. Much to my interesting surprise, there were really no network connection ports. Made me question. So I go to my router log, again, no network ports, even when I should be seeing some. So something else is going on in the background here, and without hooking this thing into a Wireshark or something, I can't get the data that I need. So maybe I'll investigate doing that a little bit later. But as for now, I don't know what Windows is doing. I know that there's a lot of data being passed back and forth. I usually can see it on my router logs. My router logs seem to be not working right now at all. So for whatever that happens to be, it is. Okay, but the problem that I have is not just with the with the Windows 10, it's the fact that all of that telemetry, all of that data collection, everything was being backported. And that's why I brought up the Surface today, is because when I rolled this guy back from Windows 10 back to Windows 8, I expected to go into TCP view and see no information. And what I ended up seeing at that time was about the same number of connections, about 200 different connections, system connections all over the place, porting all over the internet. Now, that was a while ago. I spent a good amount of time on this computer running shell scripts, detaching certain softwares and things to make this thing not connect quite so much. But even still, it's still doing more connections to the internet than I will. So currently, I have a book in the final editorial stages on this computer. Once that is done, and I move the book off of this computer onto the other computers, I get all the editing and processing done. The Surface, sadly, it's getting wiped. This is going to be I'm thinking I'm going to run Ubuntu on this, just because I know that Ubuntu works well with the tablet-based structure. As much as I don't care for Ubuntu as much as a desktop system, I think it does work well as a tablet operating system, especially since they have been pioneering things such as the mobile devices, tablets, phones, and things. So I think that this Surface is a great candidate for Ubuntu, especially since it has an iCore 5 processor, I think 4 gigs of RAM, meaning that it's going to run a modern operating system very well. So that's kind of what my goal is for this guy. So what I want to talk about, though, is that a little bit more about this user experience thing. So like I said, it's not a big secret that Microsoft is backporting a lot of your telemetry into Windows 7 and Windows 8. Now, they say it's to give a better user experience. I completely disagree with this better user experience. And the reason is, the first thing is, you can grab better user experience from a lot of different places. For example, the forums. So I have, I think my phone's over there. I'm running an iPhone. I just had to get an iPhone SE because iOS 10 killed my 5C. Talk about Apple later. But what I run on that, I intentionally go in and I turn off cellular connection to most apps in the phone. There's a few apps like I want Maps, I want my internet, email, a few other apps I want to be able to access the cellular data if I'm out and about. But most of the things that are on there, they're not critical and I do not want them to access with cellular data. So every single time you turn on those apps, whether you're at home or not at home, I get the pop-up notice that, hey, cellular data's turned off. Go into settings. It's like, no kidding, Apple. I intentionally did that. I intentionally did that because I have the lowest data plan I can possibly get because I am in an office surrounded by extremely high-speed Wi-Fi most of the day. I don't need a lot of data, and I do not need unnecessary apps doing anything with the data when I'm not in the office. So I've intentionally turned it off. There are, last time I looked at those forums, somewhere to the effect of 10,000 comments about that stupid thing, and Apple still has not done anything about that pop-up notice. This isn't about user experience. How about this one on Windows 10? You know how many times I've uninstalled Candy Crush from my Windows 10 computer? It's been at least 10 because I don't want it. Why does Microsoft keep putting it on the system? It goes up, it does the check, it looks at the system, it says these things are not installed. Maybe it should be detecting, based upon the machine ID, how many times I've uninstalled Candy Crush that I don't want it. Thank you, Microsoft. This isn't about user experience. If it were, they look at the number of people uninstalling certain apps and blocking certain apps and doing circumvention things to prevent the telemetry, and instead of overcoming those, Microsoft would actually start to look at it and go, maybe we should turn in options so that people don't participate. Because I got news for you. I do not want to send Microsoft the information about what I'm doing. I don't want them to have telemetry. I don't want them to gather information about my computer. And if that means I have a less than an ideal user experience, then whatever. I don't care. But in my experience, the user experience has been getting worse and worse and worse. Think of this. So I had just kind of as fun, a little bit of fun nostalgia on my One Office computer. I installed Windows 98 in a VirtualBox, and I rebuilt the old Windows 98 computer that I used to have years ago. You know, I got my old SimCity on there and some old DOS games I still had laying around on discs somewhere. But I put in all my themes because I did a lot of neat things with themes in the Windows 95 and Windows 98 era. And you could customize everything from the mouse cursors, from the colorations, from the backgrounds, just everything. You could fully customize the entire look and feel of the computer at that time. As we've been moving on, I think it was starting with Vista, each edition of Windows since then has removed a lot of that customizability. Now on Windows 10, I was looking at today, I can choose the accent color from a panel, and that's all I can do. Obviously, I can change the background setting. I think that's important. But really, outside of that, I don't have a lot of other customizations. I believe I can still do the sounds and maybe the mouse pointers as well. I didn't look for those. But the fact of the matter is, I had a lot more customizability. And if you're talking about a better user experience, and a lot of times that means customizability, I want to be able to go and customize it. Okay, so for example, changing the colorations, but if I go out to a Linux box, I can change, are my minimize, maximize, and close windows on the right or on the left? If I'm more used to Macs, I might want to throw them all over there on the left. But if I'm more used to Windows, I might want to throw them all out there on the right. You know, I can even change the style of them. Do I want them to be squares or circles? Do I want them to not even have a background or whatever? Like on my Linux Mint computer right now, there's really, you know, it's just the minus, the plus, and the X integrated into the window for a nice smooth appearance, which is very cool. I like it that way. But I can customize it. I can customize the colors. I can customize the themes. Maybe that's too much for some people. What are we, stupid? We are not capable of going in and customizing some colors? Hey, I have no problem with saying, hey, yeah, these are just the basics. But for the advanced users, we want to do this. But they want to do away with advanced users. They do not want people who can think. Because, you know, we might get too many people with these nice tinfoil hats. So this isn't about user experience, okay? Let's see. Oh, how about deeply integrating applications? This one kind of peeves me a little bit because, like, I like on the old Windows computers, I like the Windows Media Player. I just like the way the thing worked. Of course, they've done away with that. I think you can still put it on there, but it's a little bit more advanced user function at this point in time. But now we have Groove Music integrated, and with Apple, we have the iTunes integrated, which I hate both of them. Okay. On Linux, I can take, if I install my distro and it has one music player and I don't like that music player, I can uninstall it very easily and put another one on. So I don't have excess software that I don't really want on the computer, but I can get what I want. And it integrates just the same way. For example, on my KDE computer that I reviewed last week, you know, I think it comes with, is it Amarok, I think? And I could not get the feel of Amarok. I just didn't like it, how it worked in interface. So I uninstalled Amarok and I added Banshee, which integrates into the system the same exact way. Which means that if I'm there listening to something on Banshee and a phone call comes through on my business cell, which is the Android, it will automatically pause the music for me so I can take the call and whatever else. All of those system integrations with the notifications and everything else work perfectly fine, whether I'm using Rhythmbox or Banshee or Amarok or probably a few other ones. The only one that does not integrate like that is Kodi, which I'm more using for movies than I am for music anyway, so that's okay. But it's not about a better user experience. This is so that they can collect your data. Now, if you're not wearing a tinfoil hat, maybe they're just collecting your data to sell it all to advertisers. And for better or for worse, that's what they're doing. I don't like that. I choose not to participate, but I don't have that option anymore. Now, if you're wearing a tinfoil hat like this, maybe they're collecting all this data so that they can engage in the third-party doctrine to give the government all the data that they want about you. But the scary thing is it does seem that Microsoft does seem to take a copy of your hard drive. And in fact, their privacy policy says that they can, and that is not necessarily to link it up with your OneDrive account. Obviously, if you're using a OneDrive account, then yeah, they're going to take a copy of it because they're putting it. But for everything else, it's not. What can we do? Well, if we don't want Windows telemetry backported to our computers, we have two choices. Well, number one, we can allow the backporting telemetry and let Microsoft have their way with us. I think that that's just letting them do what they do and not being, not really thinking about what's going on. And I think that that's the bad end. Now, the other thing you can do is you can not update your computer, but now you have an updated computer with a whole bunch of security holes. That's not a good choice either. So I can't recommend a Windows operating system for a production environment right now. I just can't. So what can we do? Switch to Linux. Of course, with Mac, they're doing a lot of the same stuff. I think that Mac right now, that just with the craziness in the iPhone 7 and then the craziness in the new MacBook Pro, totally lacking ports, whatever else, I think that Apple's shooting themselves in the foot. I think Microsoft is shooting themselves in the foot. Linux is going to be the way to go, you know. And the more people on Linux, the better the system will become, the more streamlined the system will become. That's really what I'm recommending everybody, is move over to Linux for most of your work. Now, there's obviously certain circumstances where you need to have a Windows platform, you need to have a Mac platform based upon what you're doing, but don't look at Windows and Mac as your only two choices and say, which one of the evils do I got to pick? Go with Linux. There's some Linux systems that are easy to work with. There's some Linux systems that are hard to work with. I'll tell you, I love my Linux Mint Cinnamon Edition. It works very much like Windows out of the box, but without the telemetry, without all the data collection, without all that stuff in the background I don't want going on, and the full customizability that I want in a computer. It kind of feels like I went back in time to a time period when I can make my computer my own. But it has all of the modern amenities that system can do. Now, if you want a little bit more modern OS, you can do, or not a modern OS as much. If you want a more like a super advanced OS and you're a more advanced user, look at things like GNOME or KDE, which gives us a lot of great customizability and a lot of really cool features, although they're a little bit harder systems to set up. But whether you're brand new to Linux or whether you are an old-time Linux person, you can get a Linux system to do pretty much anything that you want to do. And the cool thing is you can do it with a lot of open source software. Like these videos, all this Linux stuff, I'm doing this all with open source software on actually fairly low-end equipment as far as everything's concerned. This computer that I do all my Linux videos and stuff on, it's one of the better computers I have for videos in my office, but it's certainly not ideal. This is a really good web design computer. That's what I bought it for, is to replace my Windows 7 computer when my Windows 7 computer ceases working. But as you know, it does a decent enough job for now, and you know, when resources allow, then I'm going to get a much better system to do a lot more video editing with, so I don't have to keep breaking the videos up into chunks and things like that. So anyway, be careful. Microsoft is collecting your data, whether you're on Windows 10, Windows 7, Windows 8. You just got to be careful out there. This has been Tom. Don't forget your hat. Hope that you enjoy switching to Linux.